An old priest stands alone inside the inner sanctuary of the temple in Jerusalem, doing something he has done more times than he can count. He is burning incense at the altar, the smoke rising in a thin column toward the ceiling, while outside, a crowd of worshippers waits in the courtyard, praying in silence the way they always do during this part of the ritual. Nothing about this moment is supposed to be unusual. This is routine. This is liturgy. This is a task so familiar his hands could do it without his mind even being in the room. And then he looks up, and the room is not empty anymore. Someone is standing to the right of the altar. Someone who was not there a moment ago, who did not walk in through the door, who is simply, suddenly, present. And the priest's whole body reacts before his mind can catch up. He is described as troubled, gripped by fear, every instinct in him screaming that something has gone catastrophically wrong. The very first thing the messenger says to him is, "Do not be afraid." Here's what most people miss about that sentence. It is not a gentle opening line. It is damage control. It is the first thing said because whatever the priest is experiencing in that moment needs to be calmed down immediately, before anything else can happen. And this is not an isolated case. This is the pattern. Every single time, every time, an angel shows up in Scripture, the first words out of its mouth are some version of "don't panic." Stay with me, because by the end of this you'll understand exactly why. There's a moment coming, a vision so overwhelming that the man receiving it will later describe his own body changing, his color and strength draining out of him in words almost identical to how you'd describe a corpse. We'll get there, but not yet. This is not a story about soft focus paintings of winged figures floating on clouds. This is not a story about chubby babies with harps sitting on couches. This is not a story about gentle guardian spirits tucking people into bed at night. This is a story about the actual terror that shows up every single time, right before any angel in the Bible offers a single word of comfort. Because if angels were as soft as we've been taught to imagine them, nobody would need to be told not to be afraid. You don't say "fear not" to someone who isn't already afraid. The fact that it gets said constantly, every time, to nearly everyone, tells you something the paintings never did. We're going to walk through 6 of these encounters. Ordinary people, priests, teenage girls, exhausted shepherds, terrified soldiers, an exiled prophet, and one broken-hearted old apostle on an island. Every one of them meets the same moment. Every one of them needs the same 2 words. Let's start with the priest. Centuries before any of this, a prophet named Daniel is standing by the bank of a great river, deep in a season of mourning, when he lifts his eyes and sees a figure he can barely describe. A body like beryl, a face like lightning, eyes like flaming torches, arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and a voice like the sound of a multitude. Daniel is not alone when this happens, but here's the strange part. The men with him don't see the vision at all. They only feel it. A great trembling falls on them, and they run to hide themselves, even though they have no idea what they're running from. Whatever this is, it's powerful enough to wreck people who can't even see it. Daniel is left alone with the vision, and this is the moment I promised you at the very beginning. Watch what it does to him. Daniel says no strength was left in him. His radiant appearance was changed to ruin, and he retained no strength at all. That phrase, "changed to ruin," is the same kind of language you'd use to describe a corpse. Not fear in the ordinary sense. A body shutting down, color and strength draining out of it, exactly the way life drains out of the dying. He falls into a deep sleep, face to the ground, and then a hand touches him and sets him trembling on his hands and knees, and a voice tells him he is greatly loved, and says the words that, by now, you already expect. Fear not. Even after that, Daniel says he remains without strength, unable to speak, until the figure touches his lips. This isn't a quick recovery. This is a man who has to be rebuilt, piece by piece, before he can even function again. Now think about this for a second, in terms you can actually feel. Imagine being sound asleep in a pitch-black room at 3 in the morning, and someone suddenly flips on every light in the house at once. Not to hurt you, not because anything is wrong, just pure, sudden, overwhelming brightness with zero warning. Your whole body reacts before your mind even catches up. Multiply that by something you have no framework for at all, and you start to understand what change to ruin actually means. That's Daniel by the river. Forward hundreds of years, to an old man exiled on a rocky island in the Aegean Sea called Patmos, alone, likely grieving the fact that he's the last of his generation still alive, the last of the original 12 still standing. His name is John, and on a particular Sunday in the middle of worship, he turns around and sees someone standing among 7 golden lampstands. Hair white like wool, eyes like flames of fire, feet like burnished bronze, a voice like rushing waters, and a face shining like the sun in full strength. John's response isn't curiosity. It isn't even ordinary fear. He falls at his feet as though dead. As though dead. The same language, almost word for word, as what happened to Daniel centuries earlier by that river. 2 different men, 2 different eras, 2 completely different circumstances, and the exact same collapse in front of the exact same kind of glory. And then a hand is laid on him, the same gesture used to steady Daniel. And the voice says, "Fear not. I am the first and the last and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore." Here's what ties every single one of these 6 moments together, from the temple to the riverbank to this island in the middle of the sea. Every time God's glory shows up directly, in any form, the human response is the same. Collapse. Terror. A body that cannot hold itself together in the presence of something this real. And every single time, the very first words spoken into that collapse are the same 2 words. Not an explanation. Not a lecture. Just, do not be afraid. So there they are. 6 encounters. A priest. A teenage girl. A married couple. A field full of shepherds. A squad of trained soldiers. A prophet by a river. An old man on an island. Different centuries, different countries, different circumstances entirely. And every single time, without exception, the same order of events. Terror first. Comfort second. Never once the other way around. Here's what all of this adds up to. This is not a story about winged children floating on clouds. This is not a story about decorative art hanging in a nursery. This is a story about 6 real people who each, in their own moment, came face to face with something so overwhelming it nearly broke them physically, and were met, every time, with the same 2 words spoken directly into the middle of their fear. First, the plain truth. Not one person in these 6 encounters responded with calm curiosity. Every single one of them was afraid, disoriented, or physically undone before a single word of comfort reached them. That's not a flaw in the storytelling. It's the most consistent detail in the entire pattern. Second, what that means for you. If a priest, a teenage girl, a married couple, a field of shepherds, trained soldiers, a prophet, and an apostle all needed to be told not to be afraid, then your own fear and whatever you're facing right now was never a sign that something is wrong with you. It was never proof that your faith is too small. It was the same reaction every person in Scripture has had when they came near something real. And third, this is the one that should stay with you. Do not be afraid was never spoken to people who felt nothing. It was spoken directly into the center of real terror, to people shaking on the ground, unable to stand, unable to speak. Which means those same 2 words were never meant for a version of you with your fear already handled. They were written for the you standing exactly where you are right now. So here's my question for you. Out of these 6 moments, the priest, the girl, the couple, the shepherds, the guards, or the man by the river, and the one on the island, which one do you think would have wrecked you the most? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.